Hello everybody, Theodorus here. Today we are playing Narcissu. We're going to be playing the Prologue. I haven't played this game in a while. I know it's supposed to be really sad. I'm playing unvoiced, and like I said earlier, we're going to play the Prologue. 31,000, 32, 34,000. July 2004 police statistics on suicide. Sets me, 1996. Certainly, since I was a child, I wasn't on the healthy side. But even so, I went to grade school normally. During summer vacation, I played until I was tanned very dark. June, soon after entering middle school. The day after we ordered swimsuits for the swimming class that would start next month. That time was the first time I experienced being admitted into a hospital. Just a little before the first semester midterms, a day where the rain that started to fall felt awfully cold. In the midst of that pure white sky of the rainy season, in the beginning, everyone in the class came to visit me each day. And when I was just discharged from the hospital, during the weekends, they would come to my house to play. But that was just the beginning. Fall came, winter left, hospitalized, discharged, outpatient care, and then starting again with hospitalization. Classmates who once were called friends, at some point became acquaintances, and then turned to strangers. With each turning of the seasons, it seemed that I was disappearing from their memories. It looks like it makes them uncomfortable. For those who live normally, my very existence. That's why I seem to have been erased. Numerous seasons, white overcast skies, passed without even the need to exchange words with anyone. My English textbook, from my first year midterms onwards, remained brand new. It was there that my time seemed to have stopped. Stage 9. Early summer 2004 protagonist. 8 years later, 2004. Early summer protagonist. I just read that. Summer, flowing sweat. In the driver's license examination area, a large electronic bulletin board was installed. All at once, the lights came on, and like everyone else there, I searched for my own number. 237, 237. Scanning among the mostly lit light panel, I found my own examination number. The tracks beneath the train thudded rhythmically. Because it was just past midday, the train car was quite empty. And in that empty car, I was on the way home from the examination center. In my left hand was the traffic regulations manual I had just received. In my shirt pocket was the brand new license. With this, I'm also normally licensed, eh? I murmured somewhat seriously, but didn't feel any particularly strong emotion. It's not like I wanted to drive cars, nor did I really have another purpose in mind. It was just people around me were going to the training center, and had recommended that I at least get a driver's license. That night, when I reported to my parents that I'd gotten my license, "Is that so?" was the short reply. As an experiment, I tried saying that I wanted to borrow the car, and just as shortly came a "you can't." It wasn't like I had wanted to drive the car, but the responses were exactly as I had imagined. They were those sorts of parents. The next day, upon waking up, my chest hurt, and so I was taken to the hospital. Normally I had little to do with things involving sickness. That was why waiting in the initial waiting room felt extremely boring. Finally, just when I thought the examination was over, this time I went to take x-rays and blood tests. I was made to go. On top of that, for a long time, I was made to wait in boredom. Without noticing, I had finished reading 3 books of Jump manga that was in the waiting room, and was reaching for a 4th. And just like that, I was made to do the paperwork for being admitted into the hospital. The brand new driver's license that still lay in my shirt pocket, it looked like the time for its debut was ways off. Autumn 2004. Protagonist. Around when those very noisy cicadas had stopped crying. As usual, I was in the hospital. Of course, it wasn't like I always admitted in the hospital. I would be in and out. Last month, I had my first experience with surgery. After being discharged, I commuted 5 minutes for outpatient care by scooter. And even from then on, admitted, discharged, outpatient care, gradually moving to being admitted again. I don't know anything about PET or IRESSA, but I noticed through the comings and goings that a number of months had passed. In exchange with my decreasing appetite, the types and amounts of drugs increased, even I could see with my own eyes that my strength was declining. My legs felt a bit thin, but it's not your imagination, the needle on the scale would tell me. And yet, I was looking at myself somehow objectively, as if watching a stranger, like looking at a single scene on television. The sudden things that happened to my body, my head couldn't keep up with them. The feeling that was happening was real, didn't arise. And so, even though it was supposed to be my own body, I could only watch myself from afar with cold eyes. Winter 2004 protagonist. Winter. Around when Christmas trees were disappearing from the streets. Perhaps it was due to it being the end of the year, but I was allowed to return home. In the end, it seemed to be only temporary, but even then I was a bit happy. In a mix of rain and sleet, I returned home for the first time in a while. For some reason, everyone in the family was gathered. Even though my parents normally didn't speak much, while being a bit stiff, they smiled at me. The little sister who I always argued with made my favorite ice cream stew and fried shrimp. We sat next to each other in the kotatsu. They peeled mandarins for me. They were excessively kind. That was the impression it left. During this time, I had just a bit of realization. Still left in my pocket that brand new license. That license, without giving rise to any practical value, might expire. While having stiff, unnatural smiles directed at me. Calmly, vaguely, rather simply, I thought of that, as if thinking of someone else. January 2005, protagonist. The new year came, and I returned again to the hospital. For some reason on that day, I didn't go to the 4th floor, but instead to a conference room. I was made to go. There, with my father and a doctor, I heard many things. I was made to listen. It was that thing called notification, probably. They had an extremely indirect way of speaking, but in the end, it seemed like I was going to die. I see. That was why I was only able to reply with that. I couldn't find other words. From when I entered until I left the room, that was all I said. Accepting my answers, the doctor moved the ballpoint pen in his hand. Most likely, it was the paperwork for the hospice. To the very end, he was very businesslike. My father was very much the same. It was such a simple thing. That was my honest impression. And then, between that day and the next, I changed from the 4th to the 7th floor, from a 6-patient room to a single. And also, the 7th floor itself was a bit different from other floors. For one thing, the floors were sparkling, the ceilings were much higher, much broader. Inside the rooms, it was extremely clean. The large windows seemed designed to let in lots of sunlight. However, the windows only opened a tiny bit. When I tried measuring, it was just slightly smaller than allowing your head to pass through. The other thing was, the color of the ID bracelets changed. Since the day I was admitted, a vinyl bracelet was always wrapped around my wrist. Upon it was my name and blood type. That color had changed from blue to white. High ceilings, white vinyl bracelets, windows that could only open 15 centimeters. The day I was transferred to the 7th floor, it was when the boring New Year's programs were still being broadcast. The time I met her for the first time was also at the very beginning of the year.